What's going on, everybody? Zach back here with another episode of Clutch Crew Sports. And on this episode, we are going to cover the mid-season mark of the XFL. We're roughly at that point right now. So we're going to talk about each team, what we've seen on the field, what we expect to happen in the future. Now that we've seen these teams play a lot more, we kind of know some more things about them. So we're going to give an in-depth coverage on each team. Hopefully you guys enjoy. Now let me introduce you to the rest of the crew.
What's up, everybody? This is your co-host, Eric, and I could rant at myself for not being in the last two episodes, but I'm glad to be back and ready to get my XFL talk on.
What's up, guys? It's me, Connor, the co-host with the most, and I'm excited to talk about the XFL, and you can lock that the DC Defenders are on a downtrend. Boo!
That they are indeed. They are indeed. We'll show that when we show our power rankings at the end of this. Conrad and I are going to give our power rankings on these teams, and the Defenders they were a top 2 team for most of the season, and then now things have really gotten murky in that situation, that quarterback room especially. But the Defenders are one of the last teams that we'll talk about. But we're gonna basically the layout for this episode. We'll go team by team. We'll say kind of some league thoughts, kind of a reflection of the things that we said in that first XFL episode where we were saying this league at this point in the season needs to be doing this. We're going to kind of go back on some of those takes. And then, like I said, we'll give our power rankings as well. Eric, it's good to have you back on the show, man. It's been a little while.
I heard you in the last episode said it was the Zach and Connor special. I was like, no, I got to get back.
Yeah, man. You're just as much a part of this as anybody. So good to have you back. So let's start here.
Speaking of being just as much as anybody, we should update the viewers on our subscription contest.
That we will indeed. I had my mind all about the XFL. I'd forgotten about that. But yeah, so basically, if you remember from November, we had a month-long subscriber challenge that we had to do. The winner at the end got to roast the other 3 podcasters. We all know Eric hit it out of the park with that one. But we're doing it again for March. So 5 days in for when we're recording this, we've got our updated standings. Eric is in the lead with 17. I'm in second with 11. Connor and Nate have failed to hit the board yet with 0. Already, though, we're on a great pace, though. I want to say, guys, this 28 subscribers the first 5 days between only 2 people is on a pretty good pace. So hopefully we smash out our November totals. Hopefully everybody increases on this amount of subscribers you get. And if you're one of those fan accounts from Twitter that I've been messaging the past couple of days, thank you guys for subscribing. Really means a lot. If you're new to the channel, basically what we do is we talk sports. We put out 2 episodes a week on Tuesdays and Fridays, pretty much every week. And they can vary from anything covering, when we first started the channel, NBA Finals episodes to NFL division by division episodes, weekly miscellaneous top sports topics, and everything in between. So hopefully you guys can enjoy this as a place where you get some sports news and enjoy our takes on these things. Eric, you have anything to say about your subscribers that you've gotten?
Yeah, most of my 17 subscribers I've gotten so far have been other people that have YouTube channels, most of them in the gaming department. So if you're a gamer and you've tuned into this, we do also play a lot of games and stream on Twitch and things like that. It's twitch.tv/clutchcrewsports, the same as our podcast name. We go live. We try to go live probably 2 or 3 times a week on average, and so you can catch us on there. We don't always play sports games, but most of the time we do. So we like to chat sports in there as well, or talk other video games or whatever. So if you're into that, you can check us out on there as well.
Yeah. We'll see how it goes. I anticipate winning this challenge this time. I don't want to get roasted again. So All
Hey,
right.
well,
I don't want to get roasted for the first time. So
my goal is to get more than one, so that way because I'm not anticipating going to win, but like I'm got to get more than one, so no one can roast me on that. I got to get more than Nate, so that way you don't have that as like a material like, oh, you got the least amount of subscribers. Like, no, I didn't.
Well, somebody's gonna have that, but in all honesty, if everybody improves on their score, it's good for everybody. So
Yeah.
I want to win, but every time Eric gets more, it just makes me feel even more motivated to get more, beat him. So it's a healthy competition.
well, I have a couple of strategies I've been implementing, and obviously, as you can tell by me being in first place right now, they're working very well.
Well, that's okay. I gotta let y'all win this because I've already beaten you in Jeopardy twice. So.
Damn.
I'm still holding on to my Madden tournament championship trophy out there in my mind. That's what I'm holding on to.
Come on, Nate. You got to get in on the winning business.
Nate's got to win. Nate's got to win something here.
Nate got the most NFL picks right, so
that is true.
He has that.
Yeah, we've all got some specialties with our predictions and stuff. So, all right, guys. We'll get into the episode now. Finally. So the New York Guardians and St. Louis Battlehawks, these are the two teams we've got on the screen right now. We'll start with the Guardians first, and I'll kind of just give my thoughts on them, and then I'll turn it over to Connor and Eric, and then we can discuss them. But the Guardians, they're a team that really seems to be a home or away type team because they're 2-0 at home, they're 0-2 on the road, and they won really a must-win game last week against the LA Wildcats. They would have been 1-3 if they had lost that, so they improved their record to 2-2. They have 2 losses in the division, though, to St. Louis and DC. They beat Tampa. The real thing with this team is they need consistent quarterback play, and we'll see if Luis. I'm not sure if Luis Perez is going to be the quarterback now for them or not, but it's clear that Matt McGloin is not the answer. Even in the Tampa Bay Vipers game, they didn't win that game because of him. They won it despite of him. I said this, I think, in a Twitch stream. No, I won't say that story. It's kind of gross, but you guys know what I'm talking about. But they're winning. They're winning despite of Matt McGloin, and I'm not sure if they're gonna go back to him next week or not. I doubt it. We'll see what they've got dialed up, though. I do like their team, though. If it wasn't for the quarterback, I would like this team. They've got some it factor going on there, but they're an average team right now. I'd say average on both sides of the ball. If they can get the quarterback play better, I think they'll be in a good situation to make the playoffs. But definitely not the type of team that's going to win this tournament at the end of the season. But what do you guys think about the Guardians?
Yeah, I agree with your assessment 100%. And I haven't seen as much XFL as Zach and Connor have, but in my assessment from the Guardians games that I have seen, it seems like for the most part that they do have a pretty good defense, but Matt McGloin is terrible. And if they were to keep rolling with him, they're definitely not going to get anywhere. I don't know if they'll get anywhere with the backup either. But one thing that I was kind of curious about, because I know teams can make trades. I know there was a trade in the first week, but Zach, I don't know if there's been any rumor of this, but if I was the Guardians, I would really be contemplating trying to trade for Flowers from Tampa, because Tampa doesn't seem to want to use him. So if I were Tampa, I would also maybe try to get rid of him and get an asset or something for him. But do you think that Flowers would be a good fit in New York? Do you think he could get them to that next level? Because without a good quarterback, like you said, they're definitely not going to get anywhere. But do you think there could be potential for that, or do you think that would work out?
Yeah. So from the story that I read last week, when Flowers was gone from the team for personal reasons, but it was rumored that he requested a trade. I guess it's now official. He's back with the team, but he still wants a trade. But he's looking for Seattle or New York. as his top two destinations, primarily because of quarterback openings at those two spots. You're not going to go to Houston and play very much at quarterback. So, yeah, I think that would work out a lot for them. The real key is if their coach does get Flowers, he can't be like what Trestman's been doing and play him 5 snaps, then take him to the bench, and then he's cold for a whole half, and then ask him to come back on for 5 snaps. You got to just stick with the quarterback and not get discouraged if it goes 3 and out, because you're never going to get any sort of momentum if you keep rotating quarterbacks like that. It's hard to do. So I do think it would be good for Flowers to go there. I think that could really help him out. We'll see if it ends up happening or not. But there have been actually several trades that have happened, so it's not like fantasy football leagues where no trades happen. There have definitely been some trades going on, but
nice.
Yeah, so we'll see. I would prefer if he was to be traded to go to Seattle though, just because I like Seattle better than New York. But I'll support him wherever he goes.
All right. Yeah. So that's I guess that's pretty much all I had to say.
Yeah.
Connor, what do you think about the Guardians?
Yeah, I mean, you guys pretty much hit on most of the important topics about them, but I think the big key for me about them is I want to see them perform well against a good team, because obviously, their 2 wins came against the Vipers in week 1 when the Vipers were all out of shape with Aaron Murray at quarterback. And then, they beat the LA Wildcats last week, but honestly, they probably shouldn't have. I didn't watch the game, but Zach told me that they should have lost that game.
Nick Novak missed 2 or 3 field goals that would have won it for LA. So
right, so it's that's why I'm. And also, in their 2 losses, they lost to St. Louis and to DC and got blown out in both of them. So I'll be interested to see if they can get the quarterback play down, because even though they finally made the switch from Matt McGloin, it still wasn't a fantastic performance. So I'm not entirely sold on them. But yeah, I think that would be interesting to see Quentin Flowers come to New York, because, I know Zach was obviously talking about him a lot because Zach likes him. But I'm interested to see how he fits into that scheme, because I think, unfortunately, Trestman didn't use him, but it seemed like he fit into the Tampa Bay scheme really well, despite the fact that Trestman didn't use him. But when he was in the game, he played really well. So I'd be interested to see if he does go to New York, how he would work in that system, which, it seems to be like a run-heavy offense at this point, so which could be an asset. Obviously, he can throw, but he's also, a Lamar Jackson-esque quarterback.
Yeah, RPO.
So, so like a run-heavy offense would actually be pretty good for him. So I'm not sure Seattle would be ideal for him, but I think New York would be a better choice for Flowers if he were to get traded. But yeah, the Guardians, they need more competition.
Yeah, and
more results against better competition.
And have you guys seen the Guardians head coach before? I know they show the coaches a lot, but do you know who I'm talking about? When Kevin Gilbride, the head coach for the Guardians,
Yes.
Have you seen him before?
Yes.
That guy just looks like he owns like 5 pizza shops, man. Like,
looking like Andy Reid times 2 over here.
Yeah, like he just looks so New York. Like, it's funny how they get this. Tampa's a weird one with Trestman, but it seems like each of these cities have some guy that like embodies the city where they're from. Like, Zorn in Seattle and Gilbride in New York. So it's kind of cool that that these coaches have connections to these teams. But we'll move on now to the next one, St. Louis Battlehawks. This is one of the more surprising teams this season. A lot of people had them towards the bottom of the standings in prediction-wise, but they have a 3-1 record. They've clearly looked like the best team in the East, only losing to Houston by a 1-score game on the road, I believe it was too. So the Battlehawks are for real, and they've got 3 good things really going for them. One, the run game. Their whole offense is really predicated on running the ball. They're one of the best teams at doing that. 2 is their quarterback, Tamu. I'm probably saying it wrong, but he's not asked to do a whole lot, but he gets done what he needs to get done. He's been good for them. He's made a couple of really good throws. And then 3 is really the special teams because they did have a kickoff return for a touchdown in one of their games, and their special teams, I think they had a blocked punt too. So I've noticed that they have had the best special teams unit out of all these teams, and with the rule changes and everything, that's a big deal to be able to capitalize on special teams. So those are the things I've seen. I can see the Battlehawks winning this XFL. The fan support has been tremendous there. They've definitely got the biggest social media presence. It seems like the Battlehawks are like the team to go to if you're a disgruntled fan of a bottom tier team and you wanna abandon ship. A lot of those fans have been
you want a bandwagon?
Yeah, I think the Battlehawks are most people's bandwagon team just for their centrality and their location. They're not in a polarizing city or anything like that, and they're having success. They're winning a lot of games, pretty big. So we'll see what is in the future for them. But I've been really impressed with the Battlehawks. Out of the Eastern teams, they're definitely the class of the East right now. We'll see what happens though, but I really like the run game. I like the quarterback, and I really like the special teams. But what do you guys think about the Battlehawks?
Yeah, for me, this is the team I've seen the least, so I can't say too much about them. But one thing that I guess it's just been a bad timing when I've had to work or whatever. It seems like I'm working every time they're on TV, but I agree with Zach though 100% about the fan base thing. And honestly, I've been debating on picking them as my team because not just because they're winning, but I think it was just really cool to see the fans and the little bit of action I did watch because it was a home game for them and the fans were just going nuts. Like the whole lower level of that dome was filled. I think St. Louis is just so excited to have a team again since the Rams were moved to LA a little while back, and that city is stoked to have that team. And unlike the Vipers did win last game, but unlike the Vipers, who I initially said was going to be my team, they seem to know what they're doing. Because just watching, I know the Vipers quarterback situation was settled in their last game, but just watching them in their first 3 games, like Murray Flowers, okay, Cornelius Flowers, like they just seem so incompetent. Whereas St. Louis is doing it right. They've got a great record. They're playing really well. Their fans are super into them. Like I like this team a lot, even though I haven't seen a lot of them. Just from the little bit I have seen and what I've heard about them, like this team's pretty cool. So maybe this will be my team. I haven't fully decided yet.
Dang, okay.
Connor, I'll let you give your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, you guys hit it on the head with the like the fan base in St. Louis, obviously, because all these other teams, the other 7 teams, play in areas where there's already an NFL team. I mean, the New York Guardians and Tampa Bay Vipers play in NFL stadiums, so. But obviously, the St. Louis Battlehawks, the Rams moved to LA, and now those fans want football back. I mean, I'm sure they'd be happy to have the Rams back. I'm sure they'd appreciate them more than LA does, but. They're just an all-around package. If I will say, because you guys were talking about, I know Zach was talking about the special teams, the running game, and the quarterbacks. If there's one weakness to this team, it's definitely the defense. Because I know they had a really good result against New York, but that's also the New York Guardians who can't really seem to figure out their offense at all. So, but I mean, losing to Houston was not good. I mean, it was only a 1-score game, but they're going to eventually see Houston, like the way things are going, they're going to see Houston again, and they're going to have to keep PJ Walker in check. But I mean, even so, when, you're giving up 16 points to the struggling Dragons, or, you're giving up, like I said, they gave up 28 points to Houston. And even when they were playing, they kind of struggled again in that Dallas game when I saw them. Like when Dallas didn't have Landry Jones, they were still kind of like, I know that they were still figuring things out, but it still didn't look very good. So I think the Battlehawks, if they can get their defense right, then they can definitely challenge Houston for the top spot right now. But Houston, Houston also doesn't have the greatest defense. We'll get to them later, but their offense is better. So if St. Louis is going to compete with Houston, they're going to have to get their defense in a better position than it is right now.
Yeah. All right, so we'll move on now to two more teams to cover. So the Wildcats and Dragons. These are two of the more disappointing teams record-wise for sure. Both teams only have one win, and we'll start here with the Wildcats first. And first, before I say about the team, but I when I saw this picture of their logo again with the Wildcats in orange on there, like it just looks so much old school Buccaneers, like with the curving of the A, like the sword or something like that. Like I don't know, I really see like old school Buccaneers with this color scheme and everything. But yeah, so the Wildcats, man, they're the team that it seems to just defy whatever I think is going to happen with them, because originally I got them right. I knew they were going to be bad originally, and then they blew out DC at home, which I did not see coming. And then I thought they were going to go and win in New York pretty easily, and they lost. Granted, the special teams is bad in that, but still, they should have. That shouldn't really have been that close, but they lost to New York. So I don't know. I don't know what to think of the Wildcats really. Their defense really scares me, especially in those first 2 weeks. It seems like that third week they started to get it together, but with the way things are shaping out in the West, it's going to be hard for them, I think, to make it. They're going to have to really bank on this Landry Jones injury being a big setback for Dallas, but this is a team that I haven't seen too much of, but I think most teams, when they see LA on their schedule, are thinking easy win, because they really don't have much of a fan base there. Probably the least.
The Rams and Chargers already don't, so why would the Wildcats?
Yeah, exactly. So we'll see what happens though. But I wasn't a fan of the talent on this team. They got a surprising win against DC, which made me really pause and think, whoa, maybe this team is for real. And then we saw against the Guardians what this team's really made up of, which is not very good. So the Guardians are, I mean, the Wildcats, they're going to be interesting. We'll see if they have another close game. Can they pull through and win? They've got the Vipers next week at home. It's going to be a night game, 9 o'clock Eastern time, 6 Pacific. So we'll see what happens with them, but must-win games for sure for the Wildcats moving forward.
I haven't seen the Wildcats at all. So
Okay.
I can't add anything
Okay.
to them. But to go along with the fan base thing, kind of like I talked about with St. Louis, though, like I was surprised when the list of teams came out for the XFL before the season started that LA was getting a team, with them already struggling with the Rams and Chargers fan bases in the NFL. I was kind of surprised by that, but so I guess it's not working out too well so far right now for them.
Yeah, well, more on what Zach said about the team itself is that I think, kind of what Zach was alluding to, like that game where they played against DC. I think that was a lot more DC beating themselves than LA actually beating them. Like, they did some good things. I mean, obviously, in a 39-9 win, it's not all about, the other team sucking. But I do think that was a lot of DC being out of sorts and beating themselves. So, because like Zach said, they should have gone in and beaten New York. Like, the way that New York was struggling and the fact that, they had ample opportunity in that game to beat them is mind-blowing. And I will say, if there's one thing that I think that LA has an advantage on, if he can get right, is their quarterback. What is his name? Joe Johnson, I think, is it?
I think Josh Johnson.
Or Josh Johnson.
Yeah.
Josh Johnson, he's a 33-year-old. Like, he's a veteran quarterback. So, like, if there's one thing that they have an advantage at, if he can get right, is that he's going to be the least likely quarterback to crack under pressure. Like, a lot of these quarterbacks in this league, like Cardale Jones or, Cornelius in Tampa or Tamu in St. Louis, like, they're young quarterbacks that, given big situations, you don't know exactly what they're going to do. Like, who knows if they're going to panic or not. But I don't see Josh Johnson panicking at all. Like, he might not play up to the level that some of these other quarterbacks will, but he's not going to panic. So that's one thing I'll give LA, but that's probably about it. I mean, obviously their offense can put up points, like when they played against Houston and when they played against who did they play in the first week? I can't remember who the other game was against, but
was it? I think it was Houston in the first week.
Well, that's what I said, Houston, and then I think it was Seattle the second week. I think that they played. Because I think that's Seattle's one win on the year was when they beat LA.
St. Louis, maybe.
Let
me see.
Dallas. It was
Seattle.
Dallas.
Seattle beat Tampa.
Yeah, it was Dallas. That's right.
Yeah, Dallas.
So, but it's like in those games, like they certainly have no shortage of offense, but it's the defense that's the biggest problem for the LA Wildcats, and this is a problem for a lot of teams. But they're another team, like obviously not nearly as dire as St. Louis, but they need to get their defense right because you can't be giving up, even if you're putting up 18, 19, 20 points a game. If you're giving up 25 or 30 plus, then you're never going to win. So other than the quarterback situation, I don't really see a big thing for them other than, that's and like Zach and Eric hit on, the fan base is just awful in LA. I don't know why they're even a team there, but and they've got terrible uniforms and a terrible logo. So everything bad for LA.
All right, so we'll move on now to Seattle. So this is the team that I've seen the least of, really. But I will say for Seattle, I did watch at the end of their last game. They were trying to mount a comeback, and it was kind of funny when they scored a touchdown, and then the coach was like, go for 3. But it was a situation where 3 didn't make any sense. Like they would have, like, going for 1 made the most sense to be. If they went for 1, they could have kicked a field goal and and tied it. If they had gone for 2, it would have been a field goal to win. But 3, when you're down 1, it really doesn't matter that much being down 2 versus down 1. So they went for 3 and didn't get it. And then they interviewed him, and he was like, at first he was like, "Yeah, we're trying to win this game. We're trying to play to win, not to lose." And then they were like, "Yeah, but you'd only have been down 2 versus 1 or something like that." They said they exposed the logic, and then he was like,
he was trying to use your
excuse,
Zach.
Yeah, but for this case, it wouldn't have mattered. Yeah. So he saw that, and then he was like, "Oh, wow."
Oh.
He was like he didn't. He was like, "Oh, okay." Like, I don't know exactly what he said, but he basically, like, he didn't try and keep defending it. He was like, "My bad," basically. Like he messed up, and he knew he messed up, which I thought was interesting that he actually admitted it. I mean, that's the cool thing about the interviews and stuff. I love seeing that. Like, it kind of exposed him for not really knowing these rules very well, not studying up on the points, how the points work, because he was obviously in the old NFL mindset. But I don't know why he made that call. The commentators were ripping him hard for that, but it didn't matter in the end because they weren't. I think St. Louis scored the next possession anyways. But so the Dragons, they've got to deal with bad coaching. They've got a great fan base though. We'll see if they can win some more games. But I love the logo. I love the helmets and everything. But not looking good for the Dragons right now.
Yeah, so I watched the Dragons' first 2 games against the Defenders and the Vipers, and they're another team like the Guardians, and where, in my opinion, they've had a good defense at times. They've got a couple decent pieces on the offense, but they're another team like the Guardians, though, where they really need help at quarterback. Because in the first game against DC, I think they got 19 points, which was okay, but I think they had a pick 6 in there, or maybe it was a special teams. They had something that wasn't an offensive touchdown, if I remember correctly. And then I know in the Vipers game, I think they got 19 points as well, or something similar to that. It wasn't too much, but they had a pick 6 in that game as well. And I think I think they had 1 touchdown, and then a couple field goals was their only offense. So they need help on the quarterback end. But I agree 100% with Zach, though, about the logo. I don't love the colors of their uniforms, but I do really like their logo. Like, I was contemplating picking the Battlehawks as my favorite team because of the fan base and everything. But if I was going to pick my team on favorite logo, it's the Dragons. But they need a quarterback, though, if they're going to get anywhere. I don't see anything for them this year, but maybe if XFL makes it into another season, if they can get somebody better to be quarterback, or they could trade for Flowers too, maybe, who knows? But
yeah,
they need to do something because their quarterback play sucks.
So Connor, you said this was the team you didn't know much about, right?
Yeah, I mean, I only saw their first game against the Defenders, and I mean, yeah, the quarterback for them, it was funny because he actually looked pretty good early in the game. He just kind of fell off later on.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I mean, they have it, like Eric said, it really is the quarterback because they have the pieces there. Like Austin Prohl is a really good gadget receiver, and what's his name? Kenneth Farrow is a pretty decent running back. It's just Brandon Silvers is not very good. So they need to find a new quarterback, and obviously I totally agree with Eric on they have the coolest logo. I thought that was pretty neat, except their home uniforms could use some work. That green and turquoise is kind of weird, but yeah, not too many thoughts on the Dragons, but I agree. They're probably not going anywhere this year, but we'll see. Maybe next season.
Yeah. So we got the Texas teams here now on the screen, the Houston Roughnecks and Dallas Renegades. We'll start with the Roughnecks here. They're obviously undefeated. They are the team to beat in the XFL, 4-0. And PJ Walker is probably going to be the MVP the way it's played out so far. Houston, man, their offense is really dynamic. It reminds you a lot of the Chiefs in the NFL. That's the kind of comparison that I would make the Roughnecks to the Chiefs. Now, their defense is susceptible, which makes another good comparison to the Chiefs, but this is truly, they're taking the approach that we got to throw it as much as we can and use PJ Walker's scrambling ability because he's a good runner. In the Vipers game, somehow he caught or he dropped a snap and it went backwards and everything, and he just picked it up and ran in for a touchdown. I'd never seen anything like it. Everything just seems to be going right for the Roughnecks right now. It just seems like what's that noise?
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
It's not me.
Okay, I don't know. But yeah, the Roughnecks, it just seems everything's going right for them, and they took care of their toughest test in the West, which would have been Dallas last week. So we'll see how the rest plays out for them, but I do not see them falling off like DC is falling off. I think they've got a better quarterback. He hasn't shown really any bad signs. The defense is where the questions lie with Houston, but we'll see. It's just hard to envision a team outscoring Houston with the way their offense is. Obviously anything can happen because they could miss their 2-point conversions and stuff, and then if a team starts making those, then they can close the gap. So they've had some close games, but we'll see if they can get beat. I think they will eventually, but they are definitely the team to beat right now. Eric, what do you think about the closest city to you, to the Houston Roughneck team?
Well, ironically enough, Houston and Dallas are both in my state that I live in, but I really haven't seen a ton of either of these two teams. You would think I have. There was a lot of questions going into it. Would I be a Houston or Dallas fan? But Houston definitely not, because they have the Texans in the NFL, who's rivals with the Jags. So
and the old Oilers logo too.
Yeah,
the old screwed up Oilers looking logo.
I also think the Roughnecks have the worst name out of the 8 teams. But anyway, but yeah, it's going to be interesting because with the way this is going, obviously anything could happen, like Zach said. But if it goes the way it's going, it's going to end up being Houston and St. Louis in the championship, barring something happening. But those are the two favorites right now, and if that ends up happening, it's going to be a kind of similar championship game to the Chiefs and 49ers Super Bowl that we just had, because Roughnecks like to air it out. Defense is susceptible, kind of like the Chiefs. Of course, the Battlehawks defense isn't as good, in this league compared to like how the 49ers are in the NFL, obviously. But they like to run the ball, grind it out, chew clock and stuff like that. So if the Roughnecks and the Battlehawks end up in the championship game, I think that would be really interesting. But one of my biggest complaints about the XFL has been the overall lackluster of the quarterback play, and that was my initial thought in week 1, and it hasn't changed now. But Houston's quarterback's been like the one bright spot for quarterbacks in the XFL. He's definitely number one in the MVP race right now. He's playing really well. It would be interesting too to see if after this season, if he gets a shot to get back into the NFL. I'd be curious about that. But
well, here's the thing though: is I think for him to leave the XFL, he'd have to be an NFL starter, because I think being a backup XFL quarterback or being a starting XFL quarterback is better than being a backup NFL quarterback. But
well, it depends. I mean, it depends on the money. I mean, because backup quarterbacks can get 2, 3, 4 million a year. You know what I mean? Whereas I highly doubt he's making that in the XFL. So it would be up to him. But it would be interesting to see though if an NFL team would even give him a look after this. You know what I mean? It's going to be interesting. But yeah, Houston's definitely the favorites for sure. Connor, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, and they've been honestly quite a big surprise, actually, because I remember when the season starting odds came out, Houston was actually in the lower half of that. It was like Dallas, Tampa, DC, and St. Louis were like, projected to be the best teams. And then Houston was kind of like fifth or sixth. Like they were still ahead of, I think it was like New York and Seattle, but like them and LA were kind of like right there in the middle. So Houston's definitely been a big surprise for me, being 4-0 right now. And like you guys said, PJ Walker is, the clear MVP front runner right now. And I will say one thing about like these two Texas teams, it does create a really good rivalry in the XFL, because obviously, so being only 8 teams, there's not going to be a whole lot of in-state rivals, but you have 2 in-state rivals here. So, and they really did put on a show last week. I mean, that game was, even after Landry Jones went out of that game, Dallas still had a chance to win that game. And if Houston had made a couple more mistakes, then Dallas was going to be right there to take it. So, and the fans showed up big time for that game. Not just Dallas fans, but Houston fans made the 2 or 3 hour drive over to Dallas to watch that game. And the other thing about Houston, like we were talking about, we've been talking about logos and uniforms. In my opinion, maybe tied with LA for worst logo and then worst uniforms for sure. Especially their home uniforms are just god awful. That mix of red and like sort of off blue and gray is just so. But yeah, I mean, and like you said, it'd be interesting to see between them if it is like them and St. Louis. But you definitely can't count out the Renegades yet. The Renegades gave them a fight. So, but Houston, they do have the benefit of the fact that Seattle and LA aren't very good, so it's pretty likely that they're going to get the playoffs, and they might even lock it up here in the next couple of weeks, depending on how LA and Seattle do.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
But we'll see. We'll see about Houston. Big surprise though for me.
Yeah. So now we're gonna go over to Dallas. Talk about them for a second. Obviously Landry Jones, their quarterback. I saw he obviously got hurt at the end of the last game. I think it's going to be a 2, maybe 3 week injury for him. So with this being only a 10-game season, that's a lot more significant than a typical NFL 2-game injury would be, because every game has so much more importance in it. And they're already 2-2 as a record. Now they have faced some tougher competition. So they've had to play St. Louis. They've already had to play Houston. They get Houston one more time. Granted, it will be on the road, but they do have some easier opponents when you look at it coming up on their schedule. They got to take advantage of that, and they got to try and be 500. I'd say they've got to try and be 500 without Landry Jones, because if they lose all their games without Landry Jones, it's going to be hard to come back. I don't know. I don't have a ton of faith in LA and Seattle, but I don't know the name of the Dallas backup quarterback, but from what I've seen, he looks like all the other backup quarterbacks we've seen, or some starting quarterbacks, not very good. So, and keep in mind, this whole offense was all built around Landry Jones. So having that play a backup is something Dallas never thought they'd have to do. Obviously, injuries can happen anytime, but yeah, we'll see what happens. Dallas was at the beginning of the season lauded as, oh my God, this team's going to be unstoppable. They're going to get 9 wins. They're clearly not showing that right now, and the rest of their team isn't picking up the slack enough either. Landry Jones, from what he's played, hasn't looked like he hasn't looked like a crazy, oh my God, what did the NFL do not signing this guy type of guy. So we'll see what's in store for them, but they're about an average team right now. They're playing, like I said, in that division where they only need to be the second best team. So anything's possible as far as their logo, because we're commenting on all their logos. I'm not I like the color scheme. I like the uniforms, but I'm not a fan of the logo just because to me it looks like whenever there's like a video game or something where they have like, oh, you can make a team as the Outlaws. It always looks like this logo. Like I feel like I've seen this logo in 100 different places. Like so that's why I don't like it, just because I feel like it's a copycat logo. But the color scheme's good, the uniforms are good, but I just don't like the logo.
Awesome, man. Yeah, this is another team where I really haven't seen them, but I'm in agreement with Zach here, though. They've got to take advantage of these upcoming games, even though Landry Jones isn't going to be there. I think if they can as long as they can just win like one or two of the games that he's out, I think they'll be fine. I think the four teams in the West are just, I mean, obviously Houston's really good, but aside from Houston, none of the other three teams really stand out as good competition or anything. So I still think Dallas will make the playoffs, especially since they should get Landry Jones back. But at the same time, I'm in agreement with Zach that Landry Jones hasn't looked like what what everybody thought he was going to be. I think he was the number one pick, right, when they did the draft or whatever. Yeah, so he was expected to come in and light it up. I remember Connor and I did a DraftKings and the first week that he debuted, and he really was lackluster. I mean, he just hasn't been putting up big numbers or anything. He's not really been that spectacular. So NFL, I guess Connor's probably not too bummed about him not being on the Steelers anymore. He's obviously not destined to be Big Ben.
Injury prone too.
Yeah. So he's got a lot going against him right now, but I think Dallas does get in the playoffs as the number 2 seed in the West, but it'll probably be a exit from Houston. In my anything could happen, but that's where I see it for them.
Well, I think the key for Dallas is going to be Landry Jones just has to make better decisions, because they were seeing how they were showing his stats through the first 3 games that he played, and how even though he was putting up good yards and touchdowns, he kind of had that Jameis Winston syndrome where he was also throwing a bunch of interceptions at the same time. So, and the Dallas Renegades, they have a fairly decent team around them. I mean, their offense, Cameron Artis-Payne is looking like, the second best running back in the league right now, if they can just get him the ball more. And their defense has been top notch. I think their defense is definitely up there. Like them and the Vipers definitely have 2 of the best defenses in the league. And so, but the Renegades just have to get it together when it comes to the quarterback position, because is Landry Jones the guy? He's been looking okay, but should you start, since he's so injury prone and everything, should you start investing more time in maybe your backup players? I mean, I'm guessing that barring anything interesting, what's his name? Something Nelson, PJ Nelson.
Oh, yeah.
For Philip Nelson. I think he's going to be starting regardless. So we'll see how that goes. I can't remember who ended up starting in that game. Did he start the first game against the St. Louis Battlehawks?
Yeah, his name sounds familiar. I think he did.
Yeah, so, I mean, we'll have to see what he does, because the Dallas Renegades, they've, like you said, they've had a couple of tougher games, but, they've beaten LA and they've beaten Seattle. So they've already gotten, 2 other division wins, just lost to Houston. So you're right that they need to take advantage of these weaker opponents, before they have to go back and play Houston again, because they have New York this week, and then next week they get to play DC, which, I mean, who knows where that's going to go depending on what happens with DC, which DC team shows up. But they got to really get it together before they go and play Houston again in Houston, because that'll be tough. And also it's looking like, with the way things are going when it comes to the playoffs, they'll be playing in Houston against the Roughnecks in that game too. So I don't know if they can. I'm with Eric. I don't think they can really give Houston a game unless they can get Landry Jones healthy, because we've seen that he can do some good stuff when he's in there. He's definitely not Big Ben's successor, but for an XFL quarterback, he's, right up there with what you would want. They're not going to be getting rid of him, and he's not going to be benched or anything like some of these other quarterbacks have been getting benched. So, but we'll see. And I guess I'll go back to Zach's comment about the logo. I actually like the logo. I'm not sure where he, what you're talking about, outlaw logos and stuff, but
I feel like I've just seen that. Eric, I don't know. Am I the only one that's
talking about?
Okay.
Well, I know what you're talking about, but I'm one of those people. I still think it looks cool. Like, I like the color scheme, like the light blue and the black. With obviously you got to have red eyes. So
the red eyes is pretty cool. But so I still don't. I guess this logo is like a mid for me. Like I don't love it. I hate it. All the kids on Twitter say. All the kids on Twitter say things are mid. So for y'all, the Dallas Renegades logo is mid. Is that a W or an L? Let me know.
Oh man, Eric, that's a moment right there.
Oh
that
my Lord!
A timestamp for a future intro or something.
Yeah, will. Okay, so now we've got the Defenders and Vipers here closing out the 8 teams, and I'll let Connor talk about the Defenders. If I've got anything else to say, I'll add it, but I'll let him start since this is his team. He's watched them the most.
Yeah, boy, oh boy, what's going on with the DC Defenders? I mean, especially after the first week, they were, obviously Houston was looking good, but DC was looking even better after the first 2 weeks. They had a big win against Seattle. Obviously, Seattle had some moments in that game, but then they went and blew out the Guardians, and everyone expected them to go into LA and do the same thing to the Wildcats, and then all of a sudden the wheels just fell off. Nobody really knows what happened. Now there's even talk that Cardale Jones might get benched, which, I mean, we're talking, the past 4 weeks we've talked about how PJ Walker is the clear front runner for the MVP, but even though he might have been the front runner back in those first 2 weeks, they were also talking about Cardale Jones being up there as the MVP. So, but all of a sudden, I mean, I know it seems like the Defenders have just gotten way too conservative with their play calling on offense.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I keep seeing, Cardale Jones had that awful game against the Wildcats where he threw 4 interceptions, but I think they're just like, they're not putting him in a position to succeed. They keep trying to do these run plays. Like, they'll come out on offense and run like 3 straight run plays. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, why are you trying to run the ball 3 times in a row? And then what they'll do is they'll come out and they'll, run 2 run play. Like, on the next possession, they'll do 2 run plays, and then the other team will figure it out, and they will like send this big blitz at Cardale Jones on 3rd down when they know they're passing, and he'll panic. And so the Defenders just need to get their play calling down. Pep Hamilton needs to stop babying Cardale Jones. He needs to put Cardale Jones out there to play some more. And the other thing about DC that was looking like even more of a strength for them going in, they were looking like the most balanced team offensively and defensively through the first 2 weeks. That's another thing. Their defense has completely fallen off the face of the map. I mean, they let Tampa run for like over 200 yards on them, which anytime you're giving up 200 rushing yards, that is pretty bad. And, they let the LA Wildcats throw for like 4 or 5 touchdowns on them in that game down in LA. So they're another team, like how Zach was talking about with the Guardians. Like, they're 2-0 at home, but they're 0-2 on the road. So, they're coming back home this week to play against the Battlehawks, who are a really good team. So I'm not expecting much out of them, but if they can somehow recapture some of that old momentum, maybe the home fans will help them out with that. But if they can recapture that, then I can definitely see them competing with the Battlehawks for the lead in the East. Obviously, the East is more competitive than the West is right now, with the Guardians and Defenders both being 2-2. And even though the Vipers, we'll get to them later, but they're 1-3, but they definitely still have a chance. So I'll be interested to see if they can recapture that momentum or if they'll just continue on a downward slide, which, I mean, obviously I'll be really disappointed if they keep on that downward slide because it was looking so good to start. But I'm also interested to see what Pep Hamilton decides to do. Like, I'm assuming that Cardale Jones will come out and start the game against the Battlehawks in here in a couple days, but I'll be interested to see how quickly Pep Hamilton decides to switch to Tyree Jackson if Cardale Jones starts struggling. So I mean, because we've seen it a lot in the XFL that these coaches are not afraid to switch quarterbacks when stuff's going wrong, because these aren't, they're not making tons of money and on big contracts, so you can take them out and
nobody's safe.
Nobody is safe at all. So,
but yeah, I will say I'll just say one thing about the Guardians or the Defenders. I mean, that's the last thing. I don't think they should move on from Jones yet. I think it would be foolish for that. Obviously, he's been pathetic the last 2 weeks, but like you said, they need to get the play calling better. That's definitely something that needs to change. But I think it's a little too early to give up on him. If he has another bad performance, then I'll say go with the new guy. But for now, I'd be leery of moving on from him just this early. But we'll go now to the Vipers. So this is my team. I've got the most knowledge and game time watching about them. So obviously they finally got their win last week against the Defenders. Really a must-win game for them at home. You can't go 0-4 in a 10-week schedule, and they finally did. They won convincingly in a shutout fashion too. So everything's going good for the Vipers. I mean, man, when you lose 4 games, then have a game like that, it almost feels like the whole team is just different now. It almost feels like this is a sort of momentum type of win that can springboard them for the rest of the season. And they've got LA next week, so that's a winnable game for them. But really, it's going to be interesting to see with this quarterback thing. I mean, I assume Cornelius is going to be the full-time starter now, with Flowers wanting a trade. So, and at this point, Aaron Murray's turned into a full-time cheerleader, basically. You just see him. I mean, you just see him. They love interviewing him because I guess he used to be like a broadcaster or something like that. So that they just talk to him. Oh, how's the team doing, Aaron? Oh, we're doing really good. We're having so much good times right now. That's basically that's his role now. Nobody even thinks of him as a starting quarterback. But the Corn Man, he had a good game last week.
Corn Man.
I mean, when your name's Cornelius, like, but yeah. So Corn Man, he played well last week. He proved me wrong because I didn't have much hopes in him. But really, the running game is something that they can capitalize on because, like you said, Connor, 200 yards. And it was a by committee backfield. Obviously, Devion Smith is the main running back, but then Jaquez Patrick also had he had an inspired game nonetheless with a couple touchdowns for his father. But yeah, so and the defense has been consistent. I mean, they held Houston to a pretty low scoring mark for Houston's sake. So this is going to be something I'm excited. They have weapons on offense. I mean, Goolsby, he's their backup tight end to Truesdell, who is out, but he scored a touchdown for him. Dan Williams, seems like nobody can tackle him, but he moves 5 miles an hour. But nobody can tackle him, so that's good. That's what you need. He's a big physical guy. So the offense is good. The defense, Jerry Glanville, their head coach, he stopped doing the 2 headset appearance, and it's been good for him because back in week 1 he was wearing 2 headsets, and they were like, double the headsets, double the power, but didn't work out for him. It's really funny if you see those pictures of him wearing 2 headsets. Maybe when I'm not talking, I'll look it up and show you guys. But yeah, everything's going good. When they're like DC was after the first 2 weeks, nothing after that game that they had, they are on top of the world. We'll see if it carries over, but I'm optimistic. I mean, I would still love for Flowers to get a real chance, but it just doesn't look like that's going to happen. If he could stay on the team and play, if Corn Man gets hurt, like, yeah, but I don't know. I'm not sold on Corn Man, but Flowers, as long as Flowers is here, I'm cool with the Vipers, but we'll see what's going on for them. But definitely they had a much improved win, much needed win too. So Eric, what do you think about the Vipers? Because I know you're the quasi fan, like stepping in and out of the fan circle.
Yeah, it's getting better. Not just because they won the game, but because they looked like they knew what they were doing, because when I watched their first couple games, it was just driving me crazy watching them have Aaron Murray in for a drive, and then Flowers would come in for 2 plays, and then on third down they would put Murray back in the game, and then Flowers would get a drive, and then Murray would get a drive, and then when Murray went out, and then in the second game they did the same thing, but with Cornelius, and it's so hard to watch that, and I definitely couldn't support it either. Oh man, that looks really dumb. Zach pulled up the picture of the guy with the 2 headsets on. Yeah,
2 headsets, double the power.
Okay, that's an interesting approach, but yeah, maybe on like 2K when we do our streams, maybe I need to put like 2 wristbands on my guy, or get 2 headbands somehow or something. I don't know.
It looks weird, though, nonetheless.
Yeah, it looks really dumb, but yeah, I am optimistic after watching them beat DC the way they did, but it's, for me, it's going to be, is it a matter of DC collapsing and that's why Tampa did good, or is Tampa actually on the upswing and that's why they did good? I want to see a little more for them before I get too optimistic for them, but it was nice for them to finally get a win and, show that they are capable and that they actually look like they could be a team. So that's nice.
Yeah.
Because while I'm not doing the power rankings that you guys are doing, like, if they had lost this game, obviously they would be 8th, because they just have looked terrible. But obviously, I would have them higher after winning that game. So I'll be looking forward to seeing what you guys do with your power rankings here, because I am in the dark on this. So
yeah, and before we go to that, I just want to show you this Hal Moom from the Renegades. I guess he sweats so much he needs a towel to wear on his neck, because I thought that was funny too. They show him like every play on the sidelines too. I think because of the towel, honestly. But there's some personalities going on in this league. I really like it. But so before we do our power rankings, though, I did want to do our overall thoughts, and I'm just gonna do really attendance for this, because that was really the big question that Eric brought up, was attendance. So I've got on my phone. I'll read the numbers. So in week 1, the total attendance was a little bit under 70,000, so 69,818 between all 4 games, and all 4 teams basically had the same attendance. Houston had the most, but it was only a couple hundred more than DC, who is the least attended game. And then week 2 came, solid increase to 76,000 fans. Seattle had the most of 29,000. Houston in second with 17,000, DC in third with 15, and LA in last with a little bit under 15K. And then week 3 saw another dramatic increase to 81,000, almost 82,000 fans basically. And it's really St. Louis there, almost 30,000 fans for St. Louis. Tampa had 18,000, Seattle 22,000, LA bringing it down to 12,000, but still pretty good. Week 4 then saw a decrease down to 70,000, so it's still higher than week 1, but it went down. St. Louis had the most, obviously, but Tampa really dropped off to 12,000. I think because of the hope of the team, because they were 0-3. I think that had a big thing to do with it. And then New York and Dallas were a little bit more than that. So we've seen the total attendance has gone up each week until last week it went back down. But so Eric, seeing these numbers, how do you feel now about the long-term success?
Yeah, that gives me a little more optimism. Although in a different area, I haven't seen the numbers yet, but another concern that I do have, though, is that I've also heard that the TV ratings have been steadily going down, which is also concerning for revenue, obviously. But the fact that the attendance is staying consistent and steady, that is a good thing. And maybe with Tampa, maybe now that I know they're going to be on the road next, but maybe now that they finally got a win and look like they can do something, maybe when they have their next home game, the attendance numbers will go up from that low number they had last time. But the fact that the attendance is staying steady, that is a good thing. But I do have a concern about the ratings.
Yeah, I'm trying to look at the ratings now. They say they're going down, but I don't think it's by a severe margin. But I think it's also just because a lot of it was unsustainable, I think, to have the viewership they had week 1. But I anticipate when this season comes around and playoff time happens, I anticipate this to be a major sports story in the world of sports. We'll see what happens.
That's what they're going to need. They need to hopefully at least be kind of steady with the ratings for now, and then hopefully get a big bump when the playoffs come up. Because if it gets to the playoffs and then it's still going down, then that's going to be a big problem, I think. But if it goes back up and people get excited for the playoffs, then that'll be a different thing. So hopefully, I mean, obviously, I would like for there to be, the more football, the better in my life. So I'm hopeful that it works. I'm still not quite as optimistic as you, but obviously I want it to. So I'm not going to be a complete downer.
Good there. All right, so now we'll start our power rankings. Connor and I agree on most everything, but we will split on one thing. You'll see when it comes up. But our number 8 power ranking team this week in the XFL. We'll try and do this each week moving forward as well. We did them last week, but we are going with. Yeah, Connor just moved it over there. I was going to move it over.
Yeah. I'll say, well, you can put yours on top and I'll put mine on bottom.
Yeah, okay, that'll work. So we have the Dragons 8. Their last win was in week 2. That's the difference between 7 and 8. It's been longer since they won, and they really haven't been as close in their games as LA has been. So that's why I've got them 8.
Yeah, I mean, nothing impressive coming out of Seattle. I mean, and even so, their one win was against the quarterback controversy-ridden Tampa Bay Vipers at home. So, yeah, they just haven't proven anything to me, and they've been so quiet. I mean, I'll probably say this earlier, later on about Dallas up until last week, but the Dragons just seem to been the quietest team to me. I don't really hear anything about them week to week. They're just kind of there.
Yep. Number 7 is going to be, for me, the LA Wildcats, and for Connor as well. Yep, he's put a 7 down there. So this team, like I said, really the difference between 8 and 7 is just that LA won more recently. They also only lost by 3 on the road. It was to a New York team, but still, I'll give them that. I think whenever these teams play, then we'll get a clear idea on the separation here. But this is pretty close. But I do have LA at 7, slightly better than Seattle, but still low expectations all around.
Yeah, and my reason for them being above Seattle is the fact that, you mentioned they won more recently, but also because their win was a lot more convincing than Seattle's was. Seattle was Tampa Bay was actually winning that game when they
that's true.
Were playing that game, and Seattle had to come back. But LA just thoroughly dominated the defenders in that game. So that's the reason why I've got them above. And also, like you said, they almost won. They should have won last week. So, and the Dragons were just awful last week. So I can't justify putting them below the Dragons.
Yeah. So now our number 6 team. We're going to be a little bit different here, but my number 6 team is going to be the DC Defenders, and really just because of how bad they've looked these last 2 weeks. The last 2 weeks they've looked like the worst team in the league. So that's why they're going to be 6 for me, just because of that. They didn't score anything in that last week. I know Tampa's had some of those games, but that was early in the season. Now there seems to be more quarterback stability with Tampa than with DC, surprisingly. So that's why I've got DC at 6, just because, and also head to head too. I mean, they just got shellacked by this team, so I've got them at 6.
Yeah, so I'm gonna actually have the Tampa Bay Vipers at 6 right here. I know it's between a lot of these teams, it's hard to rank them because one's been beaten by the other and whatnot's been going on. So. But I got to keep the Vipers at 6 just because, I need to see more out of them. Because, obviously in the game against the Roughnecks, that was a close game. But they didn't finish it out. And then, they finally got a win this week, but they looked terrible the first 2 weeks. So if they can get one more win, then I'm definitely going to vault the Tampa Bay Vipers above DC. I mean, unless DC wins, but above some of these other teams. But that 1-3 record is still pretty scary to me. And obviously we don't know what Cornelius is going to do in the future. You don't know if maybe they were just, extra motivated to get that first win and, that might disappear. So I'm not going to put them higher than 6 right now. Still 1-3.
All right. Number 5 for me is going to be the Vipers. So this kind of for the same reasons Connor said, but I just have them above DC really because of the head-to-head performance. I know it was in Tampa, they got the advantage, but still they shellacked them head-to-head. That's why I'm going with them at 5, and they definitely have room to grow, but I am hesitant to put them up any higher just because of their record. And if we see this for another week, I'll be more optimistic, but right now around average is where I think they'll be because they did have a strong showing against Houston. And like you said, against Seattle, they led for most of that game. So they've improved a lot from that week 1 showing, but still they've got some room to go.
Okay, so then for my number 5, I'm actually going to put the New York Guardians as my number 5 team. Like I was saying, this problem with DC blew out New York, and then Tampa Bay blew out DC, and then New York blew out Tampa Bay. So there's kind of a mismatch going on here with these teams. But I mean, I got to put the Guardians at 5. They're 2-2. I didn't want to put them above DC. Like I contemplated putting them above DC, but considering the fact that they probably should have lost that game to LA is why I'm not going to put them above DC, because they probably should be 1-3 instead of 2-2 right now. LA, if we will say, LA definitely took the biggest dip this week in my power rankings. Like I had them at number 5. I was ready to put them up at number 3 actually if they had beaten New York, because of Dallas not winning that game and also the injury to Landry Jones. So I was ready to put LA up to number 3 if they had won that game, but they fall to 7 because of the loss to New York. And I mean, hopefully, we'll see what happens with New York. I don't really know yet. We got to see how the quarterback situation rolls out, but I'm going to stick them kind of right in the middle right now. 2-2, 500, embarrassing wins, but also some pretty, one really good looking win over Tampa Bay that first week. So we'll see.
Yeah. The Guardians definitely going to be the biggest riser for me. I've got them at the number 4 spot in my power rankings just because when you compare them to DC and Tampa Bay, they've had the past 2 weeks some better games. I know as a whole, when you take the season into the consideration, it's really close between DC and New York, but right now, and all these teams beat and lost each other, so it's weird to rank them. It's really subjective, but yeah, this is very fluid for me, very close race, but just off their win alone, really, I've got them at 4, but huge risers since they were 8 last week.
Yep, and so then number 4, continuing with the theme, I got the DC Defenders at number 4. For them, I'm more so basing this on the fact that they were so dominant the first 2 weeks of the season that I feel like if they can recapture that, they will, they're going to move up the rankings again. So if they lose next week, then yeah, they're probably going to, if they have another similar showing next week against St. Louis against Dallas, then I'll probably drop them to 6 or 7. But for right now, I'm going to stick with them, thinking that they still have good to show in them, that they can still pull off those big wins like they had against Seattle and New York. Obviously, New York's kind of middle of the road, but obviously Seattle, our worst team in our power rankings. So we'll see. But this is 4 through 6 was really difficult for me to decide this week. It was really up in the air. I know Zach and I were in 100% agreement last week, but definitely some differences.
When these teams are this close, there's going to be some differences.
Yeah.
And so with number 3, though, we get back on the same track with going with the Dallas Renegades. And honestly, this is a week 3 for me. When you think, oh, they're the 3rd best team. Are they, though? I mean, it's just because the rest of the teams are bad. This could really change. But the gap between 2 and 3 is huge here. That's really what I want to emphasize. But more consistent, better overall than all those teams we've said before. So that's why they're 3.
Yeah, this really pained me to put them at 3 when I was thinking about it, because I was like, well, first of all, the injury to Landry Jones. Because I wasn't going to dip them too hard for losing to Houston, because obviously Houston's looking like the top team right now. But yeah, just seeing it's like, man, like DC lost, so I had to put them there, and LA lost, so like now I got to move New York up. It was like, man, I can't believe I'm actually saying, because I remember last week in the power rankings I was saying when DC was number 4 at 2-1, I was saying they were probably the quietest 2-1 in the league. Like, they weren't really that spectacular, and now they're at number 3 moving up even though they lost. So I don't know. It's very close between 3 through 6, but this was the easiest one out of the 3 for 6 for me, just because their loss came to Houston and not to someone like LA or Seattle. So
for sure. So going to number 2 now, I've got the St. Louis Battlehawks here for number 2, and it's pretty close honestly between them and Houston, because they only have one loss. The loss was to Houston though, so that's why obviously you got an undefeated. You got a team with one loss that lost that undefeated. It's pretty self-explanatory, but they, I would not be surprised if St. Louis went on a run and Houston slipped up. So, but right now I've got them at 2, but clearing a way better than Dallas.
Yeah, there's definitely a huge gap between 1 and 2, and 3 through 8. So the St. Louis Battlehawks, I mean, for me, I'm interested to see, because I don't think the difference between them and Houston is that St. Louis has yet to have a really close call when it comes to a game, because obviously, there was some controversial officiating and all that stuff going on in the game against Tampa Bay for Houston, but the Battlehawks haven't had that yet. They had that loss to Houston earlier in the season, but that was a really close game. Whereas Houston, like, they had a close call against Tampa Bay, and Dallas was still in the game last week, whereas St. Louis, they pretty much dominated Seattle, they dominated New York, and they dominated Dallas the first time. So, I mean, I wouldn't be shocked to think, because next week, Houston's playing Seattle, a pretty bad team. If St. Louis comes out and dominates DC, especially at DC, I wouldn't be beyond putting St. Louis above Houston, actually, even though Houston would still be undefeated, assuming they beat Seattle. So it's getting closer. It wasn't as close last week, but this week, St. Louis definitely closed the gap on Houston.
It did. Now going obviously number 1, the undefeated team, Houston. The real key for them, I mean, they're pretty much a lock to make the playoffs at this point, but it's really the defense that's concerning to me. I want to see more out of their defense, and if I can, then it's really going to solidify them at number 1. But you're right, the Houston, they really need to beat up on Seattle. I don't know if it's a home game for them or not, but
yeah, it is.
Okay, then they need to win easily in this game, considering how teams have beaten Seattle and everything else. So Houston needs to really put a strong outing to keep this 1 seed.
Yeah, we can't have another 30
controversial
30, another 34-27, like maybe possibly should have lost game to the worst team in the league, between them and LA, one of the worst teams. So especially a division game, like that's a big thing, especially when we're talking about, you said Houston's running away with the playoffs. If they have a bad outing against Seattle, I'm going to have a hard time believing that they can beat somebody like St. Louis, or maybe even beat Dallas again when Dallas is at full strength, because, when Dallas was trying to make that comeback, they didn't have their quarterback. So they're definitely on shaky ground right now. I wouldn't have said that a couple of weeks ago, but this week they're really starting to get on shaky ground.
Yep. But they still are the number 1 team.
Oh, so yeah, they're definitely still number 1.
Yeah.
There's no decision between them and St. Louis as to who's number 1 right now.
Roughnecks fans, don't go throwing knives at us. We put you at number 1.
We said we said you were unanimous number 1.
Yes,
too,
yes,
so.
definitely. So we still want to see more though. So like we do with all these teams, but that's our power rankings after week 4 in the XFL. We'll come back next Friday, give our week 5 power rankings. But it was a pleasure doing this episode with you guys. Thank you, Eric, for being back. And
yeah, man, it was good. I was missing it, man. I gotta get back in
there.
Yeah. All right, guys. Thank you for listening. Take care and peace out.
Bye.
Peace. And Renegades fans, don't be too mad at me if you're upset with me for saying your logo is mid. Peace.